What's up guys, Drew here. Today I want to talk about feather magic. Now, just like seashell magic, this is something that I am just getting into. I just started looking into last year. And while I have worked with feathers in my practice, I've not really used them in spellcraft before. So I'm kind of interested to see how that'll go. But I'm not going to force it. When I feel drawn to when it occurs to me, oh, I can use a feather for this, that's when I'll probably jump on it. So I don't know when it'll happen. But in the meantime, I have been doing research with regards to feathers that I personally own. I have collected over the years, and I just thought I'd share those feathers and their magical properties. As I've mentioned, I have used feathers in the past, and one of the main ways I've used them is this, for instance, is my feather fan for smudging. I made this probably 7 or 8 years ago. It's got crystals and a little handle made of leather strapping. I am going to redo this. I felt called to redo it and to do it better. But these are geese feathers. And another way I typically have used them is on my staves. So here I have a peacock feather. There's another goose feather on here at the top. There's pheasant feathers. There's a guinea fowl feather. And I'm not quite sure what this big ass one is, honestly. These are feathers that mostly were given to me. My daughter gave me the majority of the feathers that are on my staff. Oh, and at the bottom, I've got a duck feather, a beautiful duck feather, and a blue jay feather. Blue jay feathers are very significant to me. So here we have a little blue jay feather. I do have lots more of them, but they're scattered all over the place because, again, they do hold significance for me personally. Blue jay feathers correspond to protection, especially protection when it comes to the family, and also joy. And for me personally, the blue jay feather represents the relationship between a mother and their child. And that comes from my dear soul sister who named me. It was a special thing with her and her mom, and different synchronicities happened to reinforce to me that that is what that means in my world, the representation of the relationship between a mother and her child or children. This blue jay feather is kind of just a wash of blue. I have some that have the beautiful markings all over them too, but regardless, I love a blue jay feather. And when I find one, I know it's either from my mother or from my dearest soul sister. So this is a goose feather. I had a ton of them, but most of them are in my smudge fan, as I showed you earlier. My family went on a trip to the zoo, and in the parking lot, there were a bunch of geese. They weren't part of the zoo. They were just there. And they dropped a ton of feathers, and my children all grabbed them up for me because they were sweet and loved their mama. So goose feathers correspond to loyalty, fidelity, passion, and they represent soulmates. And then we have peacock feathers. I do have several. One is on my staff. One is kind of on the wall in my studio. And then there's this little one that's on this dream catcher. Peacock feathers correspond to luck and protection. The eye is associated with the evil eye, so very protective. I only have one swan feather. I put up a video before of us going to Airlie Gardens. We go there every year, and usually the swans are there, but this year we went later than we normally do. But one year the swans were out, and they dropped some feathers, so I got some swan feathers. Again, my lovely children. Swan feathers correspond to purification, cleansing, releasing, and new love. I only have this one pheasant feather. It lives on my staff. You can see it, they taper down to a very fine point, and they're usually pretty long. The pheasant feather corresponds to protection, virility, creativity, and lust. Next is seagull feathers. There are many kinds of seagull feathers because there are different kinds of seagulls. Some are black and white, some are pure white. A lot of them have weird markings in their feathers. But I live at the beach, so I have a ton of seagull feathers. And seagull feathers correspond to goddess, independence, resilience, and calming. These are mockingbird feathers. These are the ones that most often get dropped in my yard, personally. Mockingbird feathers correspond to communication, boundaries, confidence, and courage. These are my guinea fowl feathers. Guinea fowl feathers correspond to protection, alertness, and early defense. These are some of my duck feathers. Of course, for the most part, they're pretty average, little just brown. Sometimes if you hold them in the right light, they start to kind of shimmer. This one on here with the blue jay feather is my prettiest duck feather. And of course, there are a million kinds of ducks. But in general, duck feathers correspond to adaptability, astral work, travel, and journey. Then I have my rooster feathers, and I love, look how pretty that is. Love rooster feathers, and I love the shape of them. This one doesn't shine the way quite as much, a little bit, but they're so pretty. Oh, down here at the bottom, good. Rooster feathers correspond to lust, confidence, courage, masculinity, protection, and communication. And that is basically the feathers that I work with at this time. I do have other feathers that I have not currently identified. And like I said, I'm interested to start working with them actively in spellcraft. The only spell I've ever done where I incorporated a feather, I used a bit of Peacock Feather in a little spell bottle. But for me, it was more about a representation of air than any magical properties it had. If you're going to work with feathers, of course, you can purchase them at the store, all kinds of craft stores online. And you can get genuine feathers that haven't been dyed or manufactured or anything like that as well. I personally like to find my feathers. I like to be gifted my feathers. It's just a personal choice. It's not to say I would never buy them. I just typically don't. I never have yet, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't. And of course, if you're going to be picking up bird feathers off the ground and taking them home and playing with them, you should cleanse them. And I don't mean with smudge. I mean, there are ways to actually clean the feathers because birds have parasites and possibly diseases and all kinds of stuff that you don't necessarily want to be messing with. So if you haven't yet, when you handle them, wash your hands immediately after. But it's a good idea to cleanse. Again, maybe in the future I'll do more videos talking about my experience, my personal experience, once I have some personal experience. As always, thanks for listening, and until next time, much love and gratitude.